Hello and welcome again to another initial review, this time about the Altra Experience Wild 3 Plus. As I said, my plan was to run an Ultra in this particular model. However, I made last minute change of plans and I'm using the 275. Nothing to do with the shoe, it's more that my feet at the moment are a bit irritated, and the 275 is more accommodating in the midfoot and in the toe box compared to this model. However, now I will talk about what I enjoyed so far in the shoe and some things which I am not a fan of or don't like particularly in this particular model. The usual disclaimer: I bought this shoe myself. All the opinions expressed in this video are my own. If you want to know about the specifications and unboxing of the shoe, you can check another video which I made earlier. This is more of my initial review after running a couple of long runs, some of them 4.5 hours. I did 3 of those. Some speed runs, did the triangle of doom, which you go up and down and flat as fast as you can for multiple repetitions, and a couple of other easy runs in between. I'm gonna start with the outsole. This time we have a Vibram Megagrip with traction lugs. Honestly, I think this is one of the best outsoles I have used on any of the Ultra models. It's sticky, it's grippy, especially on wet rocks. If it's too muddy, it gets pegged and it won't grip anymore. The lugs are not aggressive enough for that kind of terrain, but anything in between, I think this is one, again, of the best outsoles I have used from Ultra in the past years. The nicest part is as well that it has almost full coverage, which gives you slightly more protection. Lugs could be, I think, slightly more aggressive. That would have been appreciated. However, as I said, they do the job very, very well. Second, I'm going to speak about the midsole. The midsole is an improved version from the previous iteration. To be honest, I like this one. I think it's flowing, there's some response to it, slightly softer. I mean, don't expect very soft marshmallow feeling, but it feels softer than the previous iteration. It can handle most of the terrain. If it's very, very rocky with very pointed rocks, you can still feel some of that pressure underneath your foot, but it's not that bad. It has no rock plate as far as I know. So yes, when you're stepping very hard on a very pointy rock, especially on the forefoot, you might feel it a bit. But so far I have got no bruises at the bottom of my feet. So I would say yes, between the outsole and the midsole, this is a worth upgrade. I really love this toe bumper. I honestly recommend to Altra, not because I think they watch my videos, to follow suit with most of the other models. It's very, very protective, and I kicked a couple of rocks several times with no issues whatsoever. The heel collar of this shoe is again very, very comfortable. We've seen this one in the Flow 3 as well. Cannot complain. I love the feeling. It has no pads like the Olympus 6, which irritate most people's ankles. So far, so good with the heel collar as well. Now I'm going to move to the things which honestly I do not like much. They might be minor for some people, but for me they are really, I say, bothering me to a certain extent. First of all is the lacing system. If you noticed, the middle section of on the forefoot of the lacing, they changed the types from the traditional holes in the surface to some kind of tube-like lacing. And two main reasons why I do not like it is because when you're trying to tighten the shoe, the flat laces tends to become a bit more roundish, so that might put more pressure on the surface of your feet. And if you're running in muddy terrain, the laces might get stuck. So if it dries in there, you might struggle a bit to pull it out, especially if you're you need to change your lacing quickly on the run. It might prove a little bit difficult. The tongue is very comfortable because it's very padded, but I think honestly I prefer the padding of the 275, which is thinner but it's slightly firmer, so you can feel if you're locking your foot down or it's too tight or too loose. Unfortunately, I never managed to know whether I'm tightening the laces too much or not, because it's pretty soft. Then you might sometimes feel that it's a bit loose and you have to tighten a bit more on the run. The last thing is that the upper is very comfortable. However, I do not find it breathable. Of course, it has its advantages because no debris will go in, no sand, etc. But then usually all the surface of the shoe is usually wet in my case, which then most likely, I've never run in rain in it, it might not dry too much if you're running in wet conditions. I was not running in summer yet with it, so I can imagine in summer how it would feel. Of course, it has the usual gaiter trap, etc., nice pull tab. So overall, I do believe it's a very, very comfortable shoe. It's a subtle upgrade when it comes to the upper from the second version. Second version, I think it was maybe slightly more spacious in the toe box, at least when it comes to volume. This one seems a little bit more shallow. However, I had no issues when it comes to space inside the shoe. I have pretty wide feet. In fact, usually my feet, especially in the midfoot and the outer part, are riding on the material because it tends to be wider than the actual last of the shoe. That's why usually I prefer the original last rather than the standard one. As I said, it's a very, very comfortable ride. I would use it primarily for easy or long runs where you're kind of just cruising. It could handle some speed, but for that particular reason I would choose other models from Altra. I would say the Altra Mont Blanc Speed or Carbon, because they have slightly firmer midsole with that Ego Pro, which I think is slightly more responsive than in return. However, as a whole package, I would definitely recommend this shoe, especially if you want to try an Altra shoe. So if you're new to Altra, maybe you want to try a 4mm drop shoe and you are between this one and the second version, I would definitely choose this one. It feels more dialed in compared to the second version. Heel collar is definitely better. Of course, I do believe it needs some improvement in the upper to have a better fit, at least for me. That would be different for different people. And honestly, I prefer the eyelets, which just are holes in the surface so that the laces do not become so thin, because you lose the purpose of having flat, thick laces. Apart from that, honestly, I have nothing else to complain about. Of course, be aware if you're running in very hot climates, because your feet might be drained in sweat. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to write them in the comments below. I would be very, very glad to try and answer all your queries. Thank you for watching. If you like my videos, I would appreciate if you subscribe and press a like. It costs you nothing, and at least maybe the channel would grow a bit more. Thank you very much once again, and see you in the next one.